Hello, Ollie community, and welcome to day 16 of our 28 Days of Ollie. Today, we're here with Jared Warman. He works for Keystone AEA, and he's an instructional technology integration specialist and also an expert in the field of creating videos for an online environment. Welcome, Jared.
Thanks for having me.
Well, yesterday in the community, Jared, we looked at leveraging videos and wanted to get some advice from teachers who are using videos in the classroom. The questions we asked the teachers were, how are people using videos with their students? Where are people getting the videos? And if they are making their own, what tools are they using? Today, we'd like you to talk with us about some of the questions and go over some information regarding these tools.
Perfect.
But first, let's start with, when did you start using videos in your classroom?
I started to dabble in it a little bit before I got into grad school. I started grad school in 2012, and while I was in the midst of grad school, before that, I wasn't really making my own videos, or if I was, it was literally just quick screencasts for how to use certain apps. We were a school that went one-to-one and with iPads, and so what I tried to do was create quick videos on how to use the app and kind of give that as the assignment, so that way when students came to class, we wouldn't waste any class time. Well, how do I use this app, and what does this do, and everything else. So we could just kind of get down to using the app. But I'd say once I got into grad school and I became very much interested in the concept of flipped learning, I started doing more research on it, and then it eventually built up into my 30-page literature review. I would say throughout the course of those 2 years is when I started to really get into the video creation part and really understand what can make a good flip video versus something that's very long and drawn out and everything else. So I'd say the last few years of my classroom experience, and then of course now helping teachers with their own videos. So the experience just continues.
Good. And when you were using those with your students, how did they react to having a video assignment?
Confused at first. The concept to them, of course, was also new. So they were so used to watching YouTube videos for purely entertainment purposes. A few would watch some how-to videos, like on how to do cool, like the girls especially, how to do makeup tips, or the boys were watching the gaming videos and stuff, or Minecraft videos. But I would say once the first few rounds of an app, like as I was pushing out those first few app videos, students kind of did appreciate those videos more, because they knew that we were going to use the app in class, number one. But they also started to ask if I would do other videos of apps that they're using in other classes, but not my own, just because they felt like it would help if some of the other classmates. And so I started doing a few of those and kind of bouncing around with them a little bit. But it takes a little bit of a learning curve for students to understand how to watch a video and not just sit back and be passive, but how to watch it mentally in an active way.
Do you think that adding those videos to your lesson was a benefit for you and the students, or just the students?
It was a major benefit for me. Well, for them, I mean, because they could go back to the video anytime they wanted to. Like, oh, what does this do again? I always say, if they ask me, I say, go back to the video. You know, I always make sure they go back to the video first. And if they're still stuck, if they say to me, Mr. Borman, I've watched the video, here's what I'm still having issues with, then I'll go ahead and help them. So I'm trying to put the onus back on them a little bit to do some of that front loading on their own. But I would say it's a major benefit for me, because it opened up a lot of classroom time where now I could get my students thinking and operating in the upper levels of Bloom's taxonomy much more than what I was able to before, when I was given a lot of that front-loading information inside the classroom.
So definitely change your classroom structure.
Oh, yeah.
More of a blended environment. What would you say is the model of blended teaching that you went to?
Oh, that's a good question. Depends on if it was a high school level or middle school level. Middle school, we were not one-to-one. So I did do some station rotation stuff at the middle school level, just because I was able to get my hands on a few devices, but not enough for all the students to be one-to-one. At the high school level, I don't know which model in particular it would be, but there was some time where we were utilizing that face-to-face time more for like large group discussion, or kind of, I would say more large group discussion than anything else. But there was also some small group discussion going on too, because we did a lot of I call them study groups. I tried to promote that idea of study groups within the class, so that way students understood how to form those study groups before they go off to college. I don't know if there's one particular model in that it would really replicate it, but I would say that it looked, if you walked in my classroom, it would look like either small groups operating or individual students operating. And I am literally going from student to student to student to student, checking in. I might have a question or two as some kind of little formative assessment piece that I would try to pose to them in order to try to get their understanding a little bit. That helped me really understand which students actually did the front loading and which ones did not, and they're just trying to fake it. And pretty soon, even those students got the idea that you can't fake learning. I mean, you can fake worksheets, but you can't fake an intelligent conversation with another person. So I think that's what allowed me to better understand if my students were really getting it or not.
So it really changed the pedagogy of your classroom.
Totally changed the pedagogy, just from the fact of, I felt like a more effective teacher, to be honest with you. I mean, before I felt like I was teaching, but sometimes I would go home and be like, I just don't know if that worked at all or not. You know, it seemed like they were looking at me and paying attention, but did they really get it? And so I just felt like a much stronger teacher in being effective because, and honestly, I could also sense students. I could sense students changing too with their perception of my classroom, because I could see students talking differently about the content and the concepts versus just passively getting stuff. They were trying to add to the conversation and put their 2 cents into it, which shows me that they were operating high in the upper levels more.
Right, the upper levels of Bloom's really came into your classroom more readily.
Oh man. Oh yeah. And it could happen in real time at any moment. I could really switch up the learning at any moment because I had that flexibility inside that classroom time.
That's great. So now let's dig deeper into the creation of these videos.
Mm-hmm.
As you said before, you did a master's paper on this, but you also created a website. Can you show us that website and really go through so that we can explore that a little bit?
I did, yeah. So just how this website came about, this wasn't something that I just did for fun. It came about because as part of the master's program, just to receive the proper amount of credits for a master's degree, they had to tack on a 1-credit course. And really that 1-credit course was create something from the information that you've gathered through your research for your literature review. And so I was completely lost until I started to put together the literature review, and I looked at all these, I think there were 18 or 19 different studies on flipped learning. And I started to look at all of them from almost like a macro level rather than a microscopic, what were the results and data, but like from a macro level. And I tried to just find the common threads between all of them. And I realized that when you look at this, all the teachers within this study really tried to do the same 3 steps. Is essentially what it was. And so I thought, well, you know what? I have some experience on creating some websites. So I thought, how could I create a website where teachers can totally self-lead themselves to go from a completely traditional classroom to a more flipped learning style? You may not be an expert, but at least you'll have the pieces in there that you need to start that transition the proper way, because there are too many, I hear too many horror stories actually of teachers that try to flip, and essentially what they do is they push the lower levels out into that learning management system just to make room for more lower level learning. And you've just doubled your lower level learning, and then teachers get frustrated because they think this isn't working, and then students get frustrated because it's just double the lower level work, and so that's where it can fail. So I wanted to help teachers to understand how to avoid that kind of pitfall as they transition over to a flipped learning classroom. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here and share the one particular tab I have here. As far as the flipped content, I would say, you know, I have the flipped thinking section coming before the flipped content, because in a lot of the studies, I read some studies that were horror stories, and I read articles and everything else. And so the one thing that I kind of thought was that teachers really do need to flip their thinking first Because if they think all I have to do is just make videos and have students watch the videos and then come to class and do packets and worksheets and textbook stuff, I have not changed my thinking at all on the concept. I'm still thinking in a very traditional way, so therefore that's how it's going to come across in my classroom. So I wanted them to understand how to really flip their thinking to start going in the right direction. But with flipped content, this is the page on the website where it addresses Bloom's taxonomy, the revised Bloom's taxonomy that I like to use with the idea when I talk to teachers about it. But then down below, we have a little activity there where teachers can begin to self-analyze their own content. What's a particular lesson that you do on a regular basis, maybe one you've done every year? Let's take a look at it and really understand what's lower levels and what's upper levels. And when they start to understand that, oh, wow, a lot of my lesson was really lower level stuff, how do I get my students to get in the upper levels? And that's the big question that flipped learning allowed me to start asking myself more. And then down below are these tips, these 5 check marks that I would say if I had to pull the main pieces of information that came from these 19 studies, the main tips and tricks on how to create these videos, these would be those tips. So these are not necessarily my own from my own experience, although I can probably attest to some of these as well. But I would say these are based purely on the student data, the student qualitative data that came back from those 19 different studies. And so I always recommend, I always bring teachers back to these tips and these check marks is, okay, let's take a look at your video. Is it definitely less than 15 minutes? I mean, 15 minutes max. Ideally, 7 minutes tops would be best. But I understand like at the high school level, they have a longer attention span. So therefore you could, do a 12-minute video or something like that if the particular content and lesson you're talking about requires it. The idea of reducing a lot of what's called dead time, which is those those pauses to, write on the board, to write something out, that's all called dead time. And so when you go to edit your videos, you want to try to eliminate a lot of that dead time. Verbal or visual cues, make sure that using those, students really appreciated those verbal and visual cues where whether it's some type of hand gesture or I'm pointing my wall over here, but if you're using different colors, that really helps as a visual cue to understand that this information is different than this information. Or even as a verbal cue of some sort where you say, okay, not just pay attention, but like some other little clever teacher phrase that you can come up with that would indicate that. And here's the really crazy part. Students were actually more likely to watch the video. And again, the video is not the main event. A video is like a small portion of what lower level concept you're trying to get the kids to learn. But if you include a video, students are much more likely to watch the video if there was some kind of little formative assessment attached to it, like a Google form, or I know there are other apps out there that where you can take the video and you can have the quiz right there beside it and so forth. But the other crazy part is this. Because teachers think in order to get 100% of the completion rate for students to watch the video, I need to grade it. And in fact, the exact opposite is what was true. Students were far more likely to actually do the quiz if they knew that it was not graded and it was only there for their own self-assessment, just to see if they got it or not. I thought that was really interesting, and it kind of makes sense when you think about it at a more deeper level. And then, of course, I understand that some teachers, there's various levels of comfort with technology and different tools. And so a lot of teachers, they just want to go out and find those videos and bring them in, which is great to start. I always tell teachers, start there if that's what you're comfortable with. It's better than nothing. But eventually, you probably want to start teaching yourself or getting outside support to learn how to make your own videos properly, just because if you do, your face is in the video, your voice is in the video, whatever kind of rapport you have with that student is only strengthened through that relationship that you continue through the video itself as well. So I always recommend that. And students actually, according to the data, the studies, said that they liked videos more when the teacher's face or voice was in the video.
Right, creating that connection with your students is really important. So even though you're creating a flip video for your classroom, making that connection with your students, still using a video is important.
And this is, you know, the discussion that we have, is technology going to replace teachers? Never. It never will, because technology cannot provide the one thing that we can, and that's a positive relationship. So we can only amplify our teaching through the technology, not replace our teaching with the technology. And then down below is just kind of a repository of various tools, and I tried to sort them out according to the device or the method at which you're trying to capture. So like on a tablet of some kind, I have an iPad there because that's probably the most common device used in schools now for teaching. If you're looking to do an iPad, those apps are great apps. I always try to include apps where when I'm all done with the video, I have the ability to save the video where I want to save it. If I want to put it to YouTube, I want to be able to have that ability to put it to YouTube because I know that's where my students are going to go to watch my videos. Some apps, they will let you record, but then they require you to upload to their server, to their .com or whatever it might be, and I just don't like that. I need to be able to have the freedom to put the video where I need it. Some of these apps like Explain Everything and then the Know Me app, the two at the very top here, those two actually turn on your front-facing camera at the same time while you are annotating on the screen. So therefore, you're able to put your face in a little picture-in-picture box down in the corner. You can put your face with the video, which is always a great thing to do. And then, of course, if you're going off the laptop, these are some tools. And, of course, that depends on the laptop as well. If you're using a Mac, QuickTime is built right on there. If you try and use PC, these are other great tools. Screencastify is a great tool if you're going to Chromebook route. Works very, very well with Google Drive and that whole suite of apps. So that's a great one. Otherwise, you always have the ability to just capture yourself. Katie Gimbar is a fantastic teacher on YouTube who has a ton of videos out there explaining not just her own how-to videos, not her own math videos, but she has a great set of playlists out there that explain how she goes about creating flip videos and why and what are some of the methods. And a lot of her strategies and tips are very good and right on par with what I had to read for my research too. So if you just got availability to a camera and you want to have some pre-written stuff on a whiteboard and be able to move through that very quickly for the video, recording yourself is another great way to put yourself in the video.
So Jared, if I wanted to explore her videos or some other videos of teachers flipping their classroom, where would you recommend I go to do that?
We do have a link. I have a link, and I think you're going to be including it in the 28 Days of Ollie as well here. I do have a playlist of videos, and I have some of these purposefully chosen as some really good examples and then some that are not so great. And I think by following those tips, you're going to be able to pinpoint which ones could be better, whether it's by a little bit, or which ones were just not on par with what you would need for students to be able to watch it. Because again, the whole purpose is I need students to watch the video. If I'm putting the video in a way that turns students off from watching it, that's on me. That's not on the students. So I need to make sure that I follow the tips and tricks and the little methods, and even ask your students, your learners themselves, get their input on what they would like differently with the video if you're looking to hone in on your own technique of flip video style. But these videos are great. Otherwise, you can certainly just go on YouTube and Google a bunch. Katie Gimbar is really great. There are a few other instructors. This particular teacher up here at the top, she also has a playlist of various videos, but hers are specific to her class. There are a couple others out there. Otherwise, John Bergman, Aaron Sams, those two were the guys back in Colorado in 2007 that started the whole kind of trend a little bit. And so they have a great set of videos themselves that explain the ins and outs of a flip video and how to do it well and what tips to do there too. So, and then going back here, a couple other things. If you're looking to add a quiz to your video, these are some tools where they can pull in a YouTube video. So if I create my video, upload it to my YouTube account, I can then just take that link and put it inside one of these apps and then also create a quiz that goes along with the video. I'm thinking, 5 questions at most. You don't need a 20-question quiz to go along with it. Something fairly quick.
It's just a really quick something to make sure that they understood the video that you could look at to cover in class the next day.
Exactly. And that's the other great part. Imagine if I put 5 questions out there based on the front-loading content, and their assignment was to watch the video and do the quiz, and I don't grade it, then before they even walk into my classroom, I'm going to see what percentage of students actually watch the video, and I'll also be able to see which question they got wrong the most, and that's probably going to be where I'm going to start my lesson for the day. So the first 5 minutes is I'm not even doing all the questions. I'm not going through all of them. Otherwise, I'm giving the kids an excuse to not watch the video. But I'm just going to go to the one question where I say, oh, looks like this one was probably the one that's missed the most. Let's talk about this for a quick few minutes. What do you guys think? Why was this a little confusing for you? And just walk through that the first 5 minutes before we start rolling, so everybody understands where they are on the first page. Because those that don't watch the video, let's say out of 25 students, 3 of them didn't watch the video. But if I talk through all 5 questions and explain why the answer is right or wrong, now those 3 students, I've just reinforced why they don't need to watch the video. Right. And then, of course, over here, if anyone out there finds a tool that they feel like fits into one of these categories, or if they want me to include more, always drop me a line and suggest something, and I'll always consider it. I always look at the tools before I put them on here just to make sure it's a solid tool that sort of fits the criteria of what I'd be able to do to make a good flip video.
Great. And I heard you talk about YouTube a lot. Do you store a lot of your videos on YouTube? Do you find that the easiest storage spot for your videos, or do you recommend something else?
Well, when I sat down and I asked myself, because we were a Google domain school, so if I'm a Google domain school and I have a Google school email address, I have a YouTube account.
Correct.
It's right there for me. So I thought it's how can I turn it down? And not only that, I asked my students, where do you go usually to get your videos? And of course, most of them they go to YouTube. That's what they know. It's what they're used to. So I can always have 3 options. Now that might scare some teachers thinking that their video is out there for everyone to see. But what can happen is I have 3 options when I upload a YouTube video. I can make it private, which means only me with my username and password can access it. I can have it unlisted, which means that there's a link to it, and people can access the video with that link, but if you go up into the search bar in the YouTube and you type in the content or my name, it's not going to pop up. It's not searchable inside Google or YouTube. And so what I tend to do is I created a lot of my videos as unlisted, and then I would provide that link to on my learning management system. I would embed it there. And the other reason why I use YouTube is because a lot of these third-party apps, especially like adding quizzes to the videos, they'll ask you, what's the link to the YouTube video that you want to add a quiz to? So if you want to go more locked down than that, I guess if you're a Google domain school, you could create a folder. Since you have unlimited storage within a Google domain, you could create a folder and then put whatever, fractions, and put whatever videos you want inside that folder, and then make that folder shareable to your students one way or the other. So I just found YouTube as an easier way to do it, and it's free. So
awesome. Well, thanks for sharing all your knowledge today, Jared.
Thank you.
We really appreciate you being here and sharing your time and talent. All the links that Jared shared today, I'm going to put on the 28 Days of Volley, so people will be able to explore those links. And thanks for joining us on day 16 of the 28 Days of Volley +1, and we will see you in the community. Thanks, Jared.
You bet. See ya.